My name is Nicole. Just last night, my phone buzzed with a text from Jake. I really am sorry. I hope you know that. I read it twice, thinking about who he was, who I was, who we had been, and who we no longer were. Then I deleted the message, without archiving it, saving it, or responding. Some apologies arrived too late. 6 weeks ago, I was sitting in a trendy cafe in the Arts District, a place with exposed brick, abstract art on the walls, and baristas with a knack for calligraphy on the coffee cups. I was there with Lily, a friend from the local business community who ran a boutique marketing firm. We'd collaborated on a couple of projects, and while we weren't best friends, we could easily slip into real conversation. I'd been through a rough patch. I was recently single, and the pain was still fresh. Lily and I were sipping our coffee, and she asked about my life, work, and love. I told her the abbreviated version of what had happened with Jake. We'd been dating for about 7 months, and his ex, Isabella, had slowly become a shadow in our relationship. The word basic had turned into a weapon he used against me. Jake worked in corporate finance. He was ambitious, charming, and always seemed to know the latest hotspots in the city. We met on a dating app, and the chemistry was immediate. We went from flirty texts to long phone calls and spent many weekends together. I thought we were a good match. I was the stable one, with a small but cozy apartment, a reliable car, and a retirement account I regularly contributed to. I built my life one spreadsheet at a time, carefully managing my finances. But around the 5th month, things started to go wrong. Isabella, who worked in high-end finance, began to appear in our conversations more often than I did. Jake would talk about her like she was living in a dream world. Isabella used to take me to that fancy French restaurant by the beach. The sommelier would always recommend the perfect wine, he'd say. Or, Isabella knew the owner of that exclusive club. We could get in without waiting. At first, I told myself it was normal for him to talk about his past relationship. Maybe he was just processing it. But the comparisons got more and more hurtful. One night, when we were getting ready for a work event, I put on a simple black dress that I'd worn to many occasions. He looked at me and said, "You look nice, but have you ever thought about upgrading your style?" Isabella always dressed so elegantly. I tried to laugh it off, saying, "Well, Isabella can afford designer clothes. I'm still happy when I find a good deal at the thrift store." But his eyes were already elsewhere. Another time, he came over to my place after a long day. We ate leftover pizza on my second-hand couch while watching a sitcom. He was scrolling through his phone and said, Isabella's apartment had a view of the city skyline. It was so amazing. I looked around my small living room, with its mismatched furniture and discount rug, and said, "My place is basic, I know." He just shrugged and said, "It's nice, but it's pretty basic." Then, one Tuesday, everything changed. We had plans to have lunch near his office. I'd blocked off my calendar, chosen a place halfway between us, and even pre-checked the menu. But an hour before we were supposed to meet, he texted, "Something urgent came up at work. Can we reschedule?" I was disappointed but replied, "No worries. Good luck with your work." Around 3 p.m. My phone buzzed again. "We need to talk about us." My heart sank. I called him immediately. He hesitated and said, "I don't think we should do this over the phone. Can we meet tonight?" When I asked where, he paused for a long time and then said, "I think we should take some time apart." I was shocked and asked where this was coming from. He said, "I ran into Isabella today. We had coffee, and it made me realize I've been settling. She pointed out that your lifestyle is different from what I want. She says you're kind of basic, and I think she's right." I was devastated. I stared at the wall, at the sticky note reminding me to pay the electricity bill, and at the plants on the windowsill. I said slowly, "You want someone who matches your lifestyle, and I don't." He said he wanted someone who would push him to be better, to aim higher. He apologized, but it was too late. He'd made up his mind. 20 minutes later, I got another text from him. Isabella says you're too basic for the life I want, and honestly, she's right. It felt like a final blow. I replied, good to know. He then added, I hope we can still be friends eventually. I didn't respond. I knew Isabella from the business events we both attended. We had mutual acquaintances, and I'd seen her name on email chains and her face in tagged photos. I also knew Jake's older sister, Emily. We'd met at a few family gatherings, and she'd always seemed a bit skeptical of Jake's taste in women, especially when Isabella's name came up. After the breakup, I texted Emily. Hey, it's Nicole. Jake and I just broke up. I thought you'd find out sooner or later. She replied quickly, what happened? I told her that Jake said I was too basic for the life he wanted, and Isabella had influenced his decision. She was shocked and said, oh my God, that woman is back in the picture? Nicole, you're so much better for him than she ever was. She's all about show and no substance. Then she dropped a bombshell. You know, they've never really stopped talking. Isabella's been texting him on and off. I told him it was inappropriate, but he swore it was nothing. She loves having him on a leash. I was stunned. All those little comments about Isabella, the constant comparisons, made sense now. I asked if they'd ever met up, and she said, probably. He'd mentioned running into her at events or having coffee after bumping into her near the office. It happened too often to be a coincidence. I sat there in the dim light of my kitchen, thinking about what Emily had told me. If I was too basic for the life Jake wanted, maybe it was time to show him that my life was just as valuable. For the next few days, I focused on work, went to the gym, and watched old shows on my couch. I didn't block Jake, stalk his social media, or send him long texts. I just let the silence speak for itself. On Friday morning, I went to the cafe in the Arts District. Lily was there, and she invited me to have coffee with her. I almost declined, but something in her kind expression made me say yes. As we talked, I told her about Jake and Isabella. She winced when I showed her the text Jake had sent. He actually wrote that? How ridiculous. She said. Lily knew Isabella too. She said, Isabella has a reputation for collecting men like accessories. She loves the chase, and once she gets bored, she moves on to the next one. I've seen it happen more than once. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through Instagram. A moment later, she showed me a picture of Isabella on a yacht, with a new man by her side. The caption said, perfect day with my perfect man. The photo was only a few days old. I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was angry, but also a bit of pity for Jake. He dumped me because of Isabella's words, and she was already with someone else. Lily asked me what I was going to do. I shrugged and said I'd just keep living my life. But then I admitted that I wanted Jake to see that I had a life without him. Lily came up with a plan. She knew about the cafe Jake loved, the one in the trendier neighborhood with overpriced lattes and minimalist decor. He went there most Saturdays around 2 p.m. Lily suggested that we go there on a Saturday and make it look like we were on a date. I was hesitant at first, but then I thought it might be a good way to show Jake that I was moving on. We agreed to meet at the cafe at 1:45 p.m. On Saturday, I spent half the morning trying on outfits. In the end, I chose my favorite pair of jeans and a simple blouse. I got to the cafe 10 minutes early, and Lily arrived right on time in a stylish jumpsuit. She said I looked great, like a woman who knew her worth. We ordered our drinks and sat at a table by the window. Lily easily started a conversation about a marketing campaign she was working on and a client I might be able to consult for. She laughed a lot, and her energy was contagious. To an outsider, especially an ex-boyfriend, we probably looked like we were having a great time. At 2:07 p.m. The door chimed. I didn't turn right away. I took a breath, sipped my coffee, and then let my gaze drift towards the entrance. Jake walked in with two of his colleagues. They were laughing as they entered the cafe. Then his eyes scanned the room and landed on me. I saw the moment he recognized me. His smile faded, and his posture changed. He stared at me, at Lily, and at the empty coffee mugs on the table. He walked over to our table, looking a bit awkward. "Nicole, hey," he said, trying to sound casual. I looked up at him with a polite smile, like I would to an old acquaintance. "Hi, Jake." He seemed surprised to see me there. "I didn't know you came here," he said. I replied, "Lily suggested it." Lily introduced herself. "Hi, you must be Jake. I run a marketing firm, and Nicole and I work together sometimes." There was a subtle emphasis on work together, showing that I had my own world and people who valued me. Jake shook her hand a bit too firmly, like he was trying to assert himself. He asked what we were doing there. I said simply, having coffee and catching up on some projects. Lily added, "Nicole has some great ideas. She's really good at strategy." I saw a flicker of jealousy in Jake's eyes. He said stiffly, "That's cool." After a moment of silence, he blurted out, "Can I talk to you privately for a second?" I looked at Lily, and she nodded. "Take your time. I'll be right here." Jake led me outside to the sidewalk. The air felt colder. He crossed his arms defensively and said, "You're dating someone already?" I blinked and said, "Dating?" "Jake, I'm just having coffee." He said, "It didn't look like just coffee." I asked quietly, "So what if it wasn't? Why do you care?" He was at a loss for words. He said, "It's been less than a week." I replied, "You broke up with me. You decided I was too basic because of Isabella." He tried to defend himself, saying it was a stupid moment. But I told him it was a mindset. I also said, "You should check Isabella's Instagram." His face showed confusion, then suspicion, and finally fear. I said softly, "She's already with someone else, and she was long before you broke up with me." He was in shock. His face went pale. I said, "I'm not telling you to hurt you. I'm telling you because I don't owe you silence anymore." Then I walked back into the cafe. Lily asked if everything was okay, and I said, "Perfect." Through the window, I watched Jake pull out his phone. His face changed color as he scrolled through Isabella's Instagram. His colleagues leaned over to look, and one of them grimaced. Jake looked up at me through the glass, and I raised my coffee cup in a small toast. His expression cracked, and he left the cafe without getting in line. That night, Emily texted me. "Jake just called me, freaking out. He said he saw you with someone and checked Isabella's Instagram." "What happened?" I replied, "He got a reality check." She sent me 3 laughing emojis and said, "He really needed that." The next morning, Jake called me. I ignored the first 2 calls, but on the third one, I picked up. He sounded breathless and said, "We need to talk." I asked about what, and he said, "About yesterday, about Isabella, about us." I told him there was no us anymore. He apologized, saying he'd made a big mistake. He said seeing me with someone else had blindsided him. I told him Lily was just a friend. He laughed miserably and said it didn't look like that. I said it was his problem. He admitted that he'd been wrong about Isabella. He said she'd already moved on, and he hadn't realized it until I told him. He said he missed me and what we had. But I told him he missed what he hadn't appreciated. I said I wanted consistency, respect, and the basic acknowledgement that I was enough as I was. He begged me to give him another chance, but I said no. I told him he could only be better for himself. He finally said he was sorry for everything, and I said I hoped he'd figure out what he really wanted. 6 weeks have passed since then. Jake stopped calling and texting. Emily kept me updated. She said Isabella ghosted Jake after 2 weeks, and he was finally in therapy. She said I dodged a bullet. I've been spending more time with Lily, having coffee at different cafes. And 2 weeks ago, I saw Jake at a work event. He looked different, humbler. When our eyes met, he froze. I lifted my glass in a polite greeting, and he nodded back awkwardly. He didn't approach me or try to talk. He just watched me for a moment and then disappeared into the crowd. I exhaled, feeling a sense of closure. Some lives, basic, quiet, and steady, are worth far more than any fantasy people walk away for. And I'm finally at peace with that.